What is poppin'? It is the Slaptodine, but a lowly Slapton riding these ReFi waves, and this is This Week in ReFi, where we give you all of the ReFi news that is fit to go ape wild over. Of course, with me is the man with the plan, the man with the perpetual summer tan, the Estonian madman, Sir Rez.
Hello, with me.
And also joining us is Ben. The sun rises in the east, but doesn't set on the west because sun does not set on a badass, Ben West.
Hello.
Oh, hey, what's up?
That's pretty good, right? And
Yeah.
I didn't even mention the best part. Ben West is the cause rounds lead at Gitcoin, and this is going to be all about the cause rounds at for our grants at GR15, which popped off on September 7th. We're going to go over Ben's history. We're going to go over some of his collections. This guy's been curating projects for how long, Ben? How long have you been doing that for? For years, right?
Well, it feels in crypto years, yeah. I started curating collections of grantees in GR13 to basically help navigate the various different cause round kind of subgroups within each cause round.
That's years as far as, yeah, you're right. It's like dog years, crypto year. You've been doing it for a long time. Your collections are beautiful. We're going to take a look at that. Maybe we'll get some alpha on some, in the future iterations of these, of the websites and the interface that people are going to be using, maybe. And yeah, we're going to have some fun. So let's start with this, Ben. What is your path to getting to where you are today, specifically in this space?
Sure. So yeah, I definitely had what I think is one of the more unusual sort of onboarding stories into the Web3 world. But you tell me how this compares to other stories you've heard. So I had a friend who was mining Bitcoin in the back of a yoga studio in East Vancouver. And he had built a contraption on the back of his rig that was dehydrating fruit using the waste heat coming off of his mining rig. It was basically like a plastic bubble over the back of his PC. And this was like 2013, back when, that's how people mined crypto back then. I should say this friend of mine is now an angel investor. No big surprise. But yeah, so I was looking for a location for an environmental event that I was organizing. I was working as a nonprofit climate campaigner, I guess, at the time. And I went over to his studio space, and he just kind of said, "Hey, come check out this fruit dehydrator thing I set up," thinking, as an enviro kind of guy that I'd be into his fruit dehydrator. I remember even still to this day that it was delicious little dehydrated peach bits or whatever. But, I'd sort of heard of Bitcoin, didn't really know what it was, just kind of had some sense of, this being some sort of digital currency, some sort of alternative currency. And I'd been, interested and involved in local currency projects in East Vancouver. And, as kind of a critic of big banks and sort of the status quo, being introduced to it by this kind of alternative culture friend of mine who, was also the same guy who got me set up on my first Linux install and had kind of just been, a person who had introduced me to all kinds of interesting things. And I should say continues to be, he kind of, I guess, green pilled me into Bitcoin at that moment. We just kind of got to talking about what this was and how significant it was. Probably the stupidest mistake of my life was when he offered to convert the video editing computer that he'd helped me build into a mining rig back in 2013. And I said no. In part, probably maybe I saved myself some heartache. I probably would have been one of those people searching in a garbage dump for my lost keys or whatever. But it took me a few years before I finally kind of really got involved. He basically, every time I sent out a fundraising appeal, he offered me $250 worth of Bitcoin, in 2013, 2014, 2015. I finally took him up on it on 2015. And then I started buying little bits here and there at Bitcoin ATMs and stuff, and actually spoke at a crypto conference, a Bitcoin conference in 2015 about renewable energy and crypto, and sort of talking about how I thought crypto could finance renewable energy and sort of, basically do an end run around the banks and, create new power structures. And I should say Bitcoin conference at the time was group of people in coffee shop in East Vancouver. It was not a massive conference by any means.
Yeah, we're all angel investors now.
Yeah. Yeah, probably every one of those people is an angel investor now. So anyway, that's my weird how I got involved in crypto story.
I love it. So Are you so
Wait,
since
sorry.
2015? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead, Reds.
This reminds me of last week's guest's Open Forest Protocol. Luke had a very similar story, I believe, where he was um, he saw somebody getting kicked out of a dormitory for mining Bitcoin, and he said that this was the first time he ever saw like this disruptive tech. It just disrupted somebody's life. Later on, and also later on, he was offering Bitcoin in return for a place to sleep. He didn't take him up on it, and it seems to have interesting parallels.
It does.
We're gonna have to talk about that. I love that.
So 2015 is when you first got into Bitcoin. Are you somebody who has kept the Bitcoin throughout? Like you've never lost it? Like kind of you referenced that before, looking through for your keys, because that was like the dark ages of Bitcoin and crypto in general.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so I did hold on to that $250 worth of Bitcoin and the little bits and pieces that I managed to scrape together years later. And actually, that Bitcoin has not moved in my wallet since like 2016 or something. Not a huge bag. I should say I was working at a nonprofit, so was not making huge amounts of money, and basically all the money I did make, I put right back into the campaign work I was doing, and that was just kind of the way I did things back then. But I did sort of keep track of what was going on in crypto that for many years. I actually worked for Holochain in 2017. I don't know if you guys know that project. But shortly after their ICO, actually, that same friend of mine introduced me to some of the folks at Holochain, and I spent about 8 months working there. But yeah, that was my first like actual job in the crypto space. I did like kind of communications work and helped with like their hackathons and things like that. Really cool crew of people. It was definitely like the way I saw it was like the biggest hippies I could find in the crypto space, and it was definitely very different than the like kind of other stuff I was seeing happening in the ICO world. But it's always just kind of been one of those things on the back burner. I've like helped a bunch of NGOs like set up crypto wallets over the years that I worked at and accept donations in crypto. But honestly, most of my life I've been focused on doing work related to like climate and nonprofit work. And that began to sort of change when I moved from Vancouver to Toronto, a few years back, and and actually spent the last couple of years working for a digital democracy company called Ethelo. That did like online public engagements, and that company's about to become a DAO, but that's a whole other story. But yeah, that was kind of my transition to working at Gitcoin. Was actually the Ethelo was being used by the fraud detection and defense team at Gitcoin after I met some of the people at Gitcoin. And that kind of led from one thing to another. I got involved in the first climate round in GR12 and then became the cause round lead in GR13.
Oh my god, you have the perfect background to do what you're doing. I just love it. It's amazing. You don't often hear somebody whose whole life has been leading up to what they're currently doing just like that. I love it.
Some people, when they ask how did you get involved in this story, I go all the way back to some of my earliest memories were taking minutes at co-op board meetings with crayons that my parents.
Seriously, like that's real. You did that.
I actually did do that.
So you literally are like the perfect human. You've been bioengineered or whatever you want to say to be the lead. This is amazing. But it's to be fair, a circuitous path, and most people that get, I think, where we're at, everyone we talk to, they tend to have non-linear paths here, and they tend to be very curious people. They tend to be people who glom onto innovation or like fast-moving systems, which leads me to this. If you are one of these people, Rez, that was good. Come on. If you're one of those people who want to get into ReFi, who want to get into crypto, who want to do well and good at the same time, God. Do I have a job board for you? ReFiJobs.com, curated, free to join. Join the revolution.
We have to clip this. This was just like too clean,
That's good, right?
Oh wow,
that was good.
Delicious.
Get
a job. Doing ReFi stuff.
Lucky to have been here to witness.
We're lucky to have you. Okay, so that's Ben West, the human being. Now, as the lead of these cause rounds, and the cause rounds, like, let's give an overview. So we have, I'll leave you to explain it. How would you explain to someone who doesn't even know what these rounds are, what the grant rounds are? How would you describe that?
Depends how completely outside of some people have to start with what is Web3, what is blockchain, but for the sake of this audience, I would assume that you probably are on board with Web3 at this point.
Yes.
Although,
it's maybe on a high level, what is Gitcoin, and then that's about it.
Okay, I'll give the kind of Gitcoin backgrounder the way I understand it. So, I mean, the Git in Gitcoin is a reference to GitHub. The platform was actually first designed, or I should say the company and the organization was first designed as a way to create bounties for open source web development projects. It spun out of Consensus. Kevin Iwaki and others were working with Consensus, doing all kinds of different things, and had this idea for, basically a way to create microeconomies to incentivize, the kind of work that is done on open source tech that all of us benefit from, but is often underpaid and underrewarded. That bounty platform still continues to exist. It's still part of what Gitcoin has available on the platform. But over time, that sort of idea of what we were raising money for and how we did it evolved. So it went from a bounties platform to a basically peer-to-peer crowdfunding site, very similar to like a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter. And that actually preceded the Quadratic funding component of this. The paper that Vitalik and Glenn Weil and Naomi created, I think was like after the first couple, maybe 3 grants rounds, if my Gitcoin history is correct. It was that sort of idea of Quadratic funding and then getting some initial funds from the Ethereum Foundation and others to help sort of support the sort of testing and experimenting with the QF system. That really kind of kickstarted Gitcoin into the phenomenon that I feel like it is right now. For anybody who's not familiar with Quadratic funding, there's a website, WTF is QF. .co, I think it is.
Can I give a high level pitch to what Quadratic funding is?
Yeah, please go.
Okay, so let's say you are this grant giving organization, maybe like the Ethereum Foundation, or maybe like, I don't know, Polygon, or any one of these things where you feel you would like to see a lot more experimentation happening in your ecosystem, and you don't necessarily know how to do that in the best way. So what you do instead is you delegate it to the community. You essentially say, hey, I just want people to come up and propose interesting things that they'd like to work on, and I have this like huge bag of money, but I am not going to be the one distributing it. It's going to be the community of people that now come in and decide that, yes, they would like to put $2 in, or $10 in, or $15 in. And these small donations get matched, or not even matched, but like outsizedly put in based on these smaller donations, which means that the projects that have larger communities of people who are passionate about it, but also don't want to see anything in return, it's a donation. These communities get a lot of matching, which means they get a lot more funding. So it incentivizes people to come in, be passionate about a project, and those projects generally end up being the ones that get a lot of money. And because now they have a lot of this undilutive, essentially free money, they have more range to experiment and try weird things that potentially you wouldn't be doing if you were went the whole VC route of raising a bunch of money and then figuring out how do you get a return on investment to people.
I love that. I love that you went to the sort of the why and the why would you use this thing? And I think too often we sort of focus on the how does it work instead of the why behind it.
Yeah. How does it work? I think that's like mostly boring, and you end up explaining math on like the matching curve, which is, it's important. But on the other hand, what does it do is the cool part. It creates communities who are passionate about subjects. It makes them come in and, of their free will, just give money to projects, and it makes them feel significant because the matching amounts are quite large. So in total, it just motivates you to also keep track and, be a part of the whole journey of how does that project create something interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would add is that it very intentionally weights the number of donations over the amount of money donated. So it is kind of like an anti-whale sort of mechanism, I guess, in a sense. Like it tries to level the playing field in terms of the amount of influence that any one in particular individual can have on the amount of matching funds that's received by a project. And I think that it kind of, almost inadvertently creates this like super exciting experience for the user where you like look at how much each one of your small one DAI donations is being matched by. And you could like, I think that's kind of the secret sauce is people, look at their, estimated match for small amounts of contributions and see it being matched by, 10 times or 100 times as much in those matching funds. And
it feels significant. It feels like you did something. And that's fantastic. Honestly, I'd like to see like cities or I think there's a city experimenting with this now. Yes, no, maybe.
There have been a couple different ones. So last round we did a campaign with a group in Oakland. We ran like a small Oakland round, which was a really interesting experiment. It was a group that was trying to interrupt the school to prison pipeline, as they put it. So it was a lot of like kind of social advocacy organizations on the ground in Oakland. And they got some funding from the city of Oakland and a few other donors that made up the matching fund. And then interestingly, they got a lot of donations from people all over the world. It gets into a bit of the weeds here of kind of like how do you structure one of these grants rounds, but it was kind of interesting to see how much influence people outside of Oakland had about how money in Oakland should be allocated. And kind of getting ahead of myself to the grants 2.0 discussion here, but I think there's a lot of interesting experiments we're going to see spin out of the sort of forkable, decentralized version of Gitcoin that will kind of play with these different like levers and knobs that determine sort of how one of these rounds is structured.
Yeah, we are in some, or you are collectively in this space are experimenting in real time with alternative ways of voting, of reaching consensus as communities. And this is one of the more interesting, effective ways that I have seen, specifically for what you had mentioned about kind of whale-proofing the process, which is a very real issue with decentralized government and a feeling of powerlessness if you're a smaller holder that, well, my vote doesn't even matter because someone's going to come in and, slap me with their whale tail. But, this gives the small, it's a different structure. I love it. I think it's something that should be applied to other things and should be experimented. Ben, you have a time constraint, which is completely understandable. For the sake of time, I want to make sure that we get into your collections. I want to make sure that we look at some of the projects that, we all want to highlight. Before we do that, I do want to give a shout out to everybody who has kind of come through our podcast. So really quick, we've got ReFi Dao is up for in this round, and they have a collection themselves. So all of this is going to be linked, by the way. So we've got these guys coming on. Let me make sure I got this up on my screen. I do. All right, cool. We've got Spirals, who we spoke with. Helena came on about a month ago. Bati is leading MRV 101. Check that out. CO2 Cult, Milk Money came on, spoke with us. We've got Changeblock. Billy came on and spoke with us. I believe that's it to date. Is that right, Rez? I haven't missed anybody. I want to make sure.
Unless Open Forest Protocol is doing a Gitcoin round, and I don't think they are. In that case, I think that list should be more or less complete.
Yeah, so those are all projects that we have personally had, vetted. We've seen, they've been on the show. You can make up your own mind about the people running them. We obviously wouldn't have had them on if we didn't think they were people of repute. So there's that. Now I want to get into your collections because you are a professional. This is what, to some degree, this is what you do. And I think you've put together some really cool collections. And so people who don't know, you can group these things into any arbitrary category that you want. As an example, you have put together what's called the Welcoming Committee. And I love this because how many grants are there in, let's say, the climate round? 196, something like that? It's a lot, right?
Yeah, I think we're at about 185 right now live on the site. And that's gone from like 22 in the first round up to like 96 and then 150. And I think we'll be over 200 probably by the cutoff on the 14th for this round.
So it's hard to get noticed. And, it is hard in this space. I know this. You guys know this, to get a foothold. Once you get the foothold and you can back it up with competency, you're all good to go. But like it's anything else in life, like how do you get started? So you've put together a collection of 16 grants called the Welcoming Committee. And it's probably new to the space, right? Or people who don't have as firm connections to the space? Are there any projects in here in particular? And, obviously they're all worth looking at. Anything that you want to point out, any projects?
Yeah, I mean, there's some really interesting projects in the welcoming committee, and I have to say, hopefully before this goes live, I'll have a chance to update it too, because there's so many new grants coming in that I haven't got all the new ones captured in here as well. But really the idea here was, because the cause rounds in particular are open to people that are not Web3 native, like you'll actually find some stuff in here that isn't even web develelment projects. These are just like,
we highlighted one last time, which was like a regenerative city somewhere, I believe, or like this kind of village structure.
Totally. Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of stuff. And some of it, actually, the first project that I helped onboard personally was a group of indigenous activists fighting a pipeline in British Columbia. And I was pleasantly surprised to see them actually raise a whole bunch of money from, a lot of people all over the world who don't know them, which to me was just kind of fascinating, and was something that I thought like people in the nonprofit world should pay attention to. Is like, there's an opportunity, there's a community here, there's new mechanisms that are being explored. So I mean, that was actually kind of my first interest in this. Going off on a little tangent from your question, but that project is still in that welcoming committee. They're called Beyond Fossil Fuels. It's some folks I know from my years doing environmental activism work and working with indigenous communities. And like the other end of the spectrum is like a project called Make Change Possible. A group of young people who travel to Nairobi every year and help set up solar panels and plant trees and that kind of thing. There's kind of a whole range of different projects all over the world. There's ones in Turkey and India and in Japan and China. We actually have a whole round dedicated to projects being developed in China right now, which I think is interesting. So there's definitely a lot of different projects I would point out in the welcoming committee. And really kind of the point of the welcoming committee and all these collections was less so to pick out the individual ones, but more to kind of like bundle them together and have everybody cross promoting and supporting each other. Because, I think at its worst, like the Gitcoin platform can become sort of a popularity contest, really like any democratic decision-making process. And the intention, like you pointed out, is to like signal the support of the community towards kind of ideas and projects that have support. So really our goal here was to like level the playing field, give everybody an opportunity to at least get in front of an audience. And this was just one of the things that we did to sort of help support that. We also actually at one point created cross-pollination collections that were like intentionally mixtures of folks who were like in totally different use cases and totally different sections, some bigger, some smaller. It was too labor intensive to do repeatedly, but I've been encouraging people to kind of take it on themselves to create these kinds of collections and sort of poke at others to co-promote with them and host Twitter spaces together and that kind of thing. And it's been super cool to see that sort of like decentralized model of cooperation kind of play out in real time.
Cool, man. So thank you for pointing those out, and thank you for these collections. I'm going to dive through them as well. Like I said, links to everything in the description of this video. Very cool. And I was going to say, nothing, what's the word? Galvanizes a community kind of like fighting a pipeline. Have you found that? It's like, that's all you got to say.
It definitely galvanizes a community in more ways than one. I can tell you that, it also really pisses a lot of people off. Any major change, any major piece of infrastructure that's got like decades of implications kind of after that infrastructure is in place and sort of locked in, really sparks a conversation. And, yet another tangent here, but I think often in the environmental movement, we kind of get stuck in these like conversations around stopping things instead of like building new things, because it's much, easier to build a big tent coalition around something that people all agree that they dislike. It's a lot harder to build coalitions around things people do like. And that's actually a big part of what I love about doing this work with Gitcoin and really the Web3 space is we're all focused on like building new things and trying to find and build consensus around what to build. And that seems to be like a big unsolved problem that, really needs more attention. So in a sense, a worthwhile tangent, I suppose.
They're all worthwhile tangents. I love them all. It's very interesting. Yeah. And dude, I could talk to you forever. So like the parallels with that, like coalescing people around negative things, Like that's what political campaigns are, right? So don't talk about what your candidate's doing well, because like maybe half of us will agree with that, but we can all agree that more taxes are bad, right? And everyone goes boo. It's much easier to point to things that the incumbent failed on or whatever. Yeah, very good. All right, so the next collection we can bring to your attention is the clean energy and decentralized grid projects. What exactly does that mean? What is decentralized grid projects? What are we talking about here?
Yeah, I mean, basically, I was just trying to kind of sort out the climate round into different use case types. So really, I was just looking for anybody who is like directly working on some sort of renewable energy infrastructure on the ground, whether that be like directly financing solar projects or wind projects, or creating the sort of backbone infrastructure for like a local grid so that people can buy and sell electricity from each other. This was actually one of the use cases that I've been excited about in crypto for many, many years, and it's cool to see that kind of coming to reality. It's also one of the things that's kind of the most difficult to navigate existing bureaucracies. But I think like many things, it's also kind of leapfrogging over existing technology in emerging markets. Like, so we're seeing some places that never really were on the grid, creating their own decentralized grids and needing some way to account for who's using how much energy and like who's paying for that and how do you sort of track all that. And there's a number of different projects that are sort of building infrastructure that helps to make that kind of work a reality. There's one in Norway called Seven Energy, which I'll point to just because I think it's an interesting one. I actually interviewed them myself recently for this research I'm in the midst of, which is a whole other conversation. But they're kind of helped along by the fact that they've got some beneficial regulation in their jurisdiction. That basically makes it required that the energy companies need to actually facilitate them having community local grids for reasons of sort of local stability in the grid and prevention against blackouts and that kind of thing. There's a bunch of different companies doing this in different ways, and I should say not all of them are on the Gitcoin grants round. There's some other interesting ones that are not applying for Gitcoin grants but are worth paying attention to. Also talked to a group of guys in Toronto who are actually building something similar for electric vehicle charging in condo complexes, where you can sell the electricity back from your vehicle's battery to the condo complex. So not only are you like charging your vehicle, but like now all the vehicles in the basement become sort of like a backup battery for that building. So it's kind of like this two-way market, and the company basically just facilitates all that with their app, and it's all done on chain. And the people using it don't even know blockchain's in the middle of it. They're just like, having their problem solved by blockchain without even knowing it. Anyway, lots of projects kind of in that space. Some of them are building big projects in India, and some of them are doing small microgrids in Africa. And you could almost kind of lump in the monitoring and verification stuff into this, because sometimes those also tie in together. Although I think I stuck them in a different category because it's a little bit more tied to ReFi and also to some of the logistics and carbon accounting stuff. Can you tell I'm heavily caffeinated now? I'm like starting to talk quickly.
I love it. Yeah, that's my life. That's my world. What are you, just a coffee guy, espresso? What are you doing these days?
I've just been drinking good old drip coffee recently. I'm pretty boring, but I, was for a while there. I was getting fancy with the the cone and the dripping. Grinding. I'm too busy now. I just got a coffee maker. I don't know. I'm drinking truck stock coffee these days.
That's the best kind. The truckers know what they're doing. They got to be alert and awake. I trust. 100%. I trust their caffeine.
Yeah. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm
sure. With you. Maybe we can have a Rez. You drink caffeine? And this is this is gonna be like a tangential episode. I'm happy to do it because I'm enjoying this. Are you a caffeine person? Maybe we can have a
caffeine pills. Yes,
you do. Maybe we can have a caffeine episode. I'm not even joking. And there's you guys have. I don't know if you picked up on it. I'm sure you have, Ben. That there's a coffee project and the grant rounds and the cause round. Did you? I can't remember the specifics of it. I didn't dig into it.
Either. Maybe we could add the link later. Just feel bad I can't remember.
Yeah, we will. But
it's the Crypto Coffee Collective. I think was the name of it.
We'll take a look at it.
Yeah,
I'm actually drinking Marley brand right now. One Love coffee.
There you go, man. That's a good show. So the one you had just mentioned, I think you said you had put into a different collective kind of Do you have an DMRV? I know you have emissions tracking and Oracle. That's one of the things I wanted to talk about. Let's do that. Let's do emissions tracking and oracles. I'll pull that up on the screen. So what can you tell us about this collective? What does that exactly mean? What are we doing with these projects?
I mean, these were actually some of the most popular projects in the last couple of rounds. Shamba Network and Astral Protocol. Basically, I think these are projects that are trying to solve the $1 million question or the $1 billion question around offsets. How do you verify that a ton of carbon has actually been removed? How do you sort of ensure the kind of accountability of these markets, which have been much derided in the media as of late. Almost a day doesn't go by where you don't see some sort of a piece talking about fraudulent carbon offsets of one kind or another.
Deep dive. We had a deep dive on that subject almost exactly last week.
Did you? Did you talk about John Oliver holding a chainsaw next to a tree?
Yes.
Yeah, I thought that summed up some of the problems with offsets pretty well. Just that one particular thing with him holding the chainsaw. If you don't pay me, I'm going to chop down this tree. I thought that was kind of hilarious. And I mean, I can say as somebody who worked in the environmental sector for years, definitely I've seen the whole range of really good offset projects and ones that were really just money flowing to some company to not do something they shouldn't have done to begin with. So a lot really does depend on regulations and how government works in the middle of it. But, what excites me about this space is I think there's just a bunch of really intelligent and sort of motivated people trying to just do an end run around all this kind of crap that's going on in the meat space and come up with ways of doing this that are verifiable, trustable, transparent, all the things that we like about crypto, and also put money directly in the hands of people on the ground more directly, cutting out middlemen and just making things work. So lots of different ways that people are going about doing that. Really just tried to kind of capture the ones that are on the platform that are sort of in this space of the sort of monitoring, reporting, verification. There's a bunch of different Oracle projects, and in the ReFi space, you'll notice. I mean, it's the biggest category in the climate round for obvious reasons, and there's a wide range of projects in there. Debatable even where you draw the lines of what is ReFi. I would say the membranes in between each of these collections is pretty thin. You could honestly move a lot of these projects from one collection to the other. We just kind of tried to help people at least at a high level sort of sort through different use case types.
Makes sense. Also, for the sake of time, I want to make sure we get you out at appropriate time. And we believe all the collections, and maybe Rez and I are going to stick around and we'll discuss this a little bit. Our projects of interest to us a little bit longer, but I want to get your take on where you think where this is going to go, where these cause rounds, I think you had mentioned a 2.0, any sort of alpha you could drop, the challenges of scaling up the way you have and how we can handle that better.
Yeah, good question. So I realized that when we were talking about the cause rounds earlier, I actually didn't give you the full sort of how it's broken down now. So we've got actually 17 rounds in this grants round, which is a big growth in the total number of sort of offsets or offshoots of the original kind of main round of the grants platform. And we've now decoupled the main round from all the side rounds. So there's 4 cause rounds. There's the climate solutions round, the diversity, equity, inclusion round, the decentralized science round, which is happening for the first time this round, which is very exciting, and the crypto advocacy lobbying round, which I would say is probably the one that the most people try to tag themselves into that actually don't qualify for, because everybody sees themselves as an advocate for crypto. So we added the word regulatory right in there to make it clear that this isn't just I tweet about how much I love crypto, but it's this is people that are actively trying to affect legislation and regulation, and have a strategy around that, and that's what the grant's about. So in terms of the alpha, we've been on the same version of the Gitcoin platform now since Kevin Owocki built it. And then we've continued to add layers and layers and layers of it. And we jokingly say that it's kind of held together with duct tape and glue and good vibes. There's a lot of work that goes on under the hood to sort of make the Gitcoin grants rounds run. That was a tongue twister, in the way that they do sort of on the existing platform. And the majority of our developer time now is actually going into the building of the Grants 2.0 platform, which is actually a few different pieces. There's the Passport, which is the like sort of identity verification civil defense tool, which you may have seen.
Very important question. How do we know you're a person?
Yes.
Because we have this very nice system where people matter and money matters a bit less than, if you can create a bunch of fake people, that's an attack vector. It's called a Sybil attack for the people listening, where you make up that you are actually 5 people instead of 1, and then the system behaves badly because of it. Gitcoin is the main, I think the main crypto project that has to contend with this challenge, and it's gotten very good at detecting who is real and who isn't.
It's a big ongoing challenge. And I mean, honestly, it's an arms race. Like our fraud detection and defense team is constantly iterating on how they go about doing this work. For anybody who really wants to take a deep dive into it, there's like the governance channels, the gov.gitcoin.co. You can find kind of lots and lots of discussion of sort of like the various different iterations, as well as you can follow the development of Grants 2.0. And there's basically these 3 parts: the passport piece, which is civil defense. There's the Grants Hub, which is where people like onboard their grant proposals like you do now. And also, where people go to look and donate and all that, like the front facing piece. And then there's the round manager, which is the back end where people actually running around, turn those dials and knobs to determine like what the maximum matching amount is, where the saturation points are, making decisions about who's allowed in a matching round or not, all that stuff. Which honestly, a lot of right now is done on like spreadsheets, and it's a lot of work because people tag themselves into multiple different rounds. We have different teams who are making decisions about whether somebody's eligible or not. At the same time, trying to protect against civil attacks. People impersonate other people and pretend that a grant is theirs when it isn't. So really, there's a fair amount of work that has to go into just like making sure that everything that's on the platform is legit. We use a mixture of sort of, advisors and partners, as well as kind of crowdsourcing. Anybody can flag a project that they think is fraudulent or shouldn't be eligible for a round. And then there's like a process that happens at the end of the round to make the final decisions about, who actually gets the matching funds before they're distributed, in case anything that was flagged actually does turn up to have kind of slipped through the cracks of our initial process. But all 3 of those pieces and some other background pieces are being developed simultaneously right now. And we're basically taking incremental steps to rolling this all out. Like right now, we're seeing, the passport being used quite actively. We actually used it for the first time last round. I think something like 15,000 people onboarded themselves via passport. And now we've made it the only way that you can verify your identity and increase your matching amount. If you don't do the verification, you get a 50% match. You can go up to 150% match. So it basically changes the influence of your sort of weighting as an individual, which, by the way,
you are more of a person than other people.
You are more of a person. It's true. You're 150% real if you verify yourself. And interestingly, it uses a combination of like Bright ID and Proof of Humanity, as well as like thousands of other data points from Twitter, like the age of your account and the number of relationships and all those kinds of things to sort of create a score of how trustable this system considers you to be. But yeah, in terms of like the struggles that come with that, I think we've honestly pushed the platform like right to the edge of what it can do in its current form. And especially because so much of our dev time is going into building out the new platform. Like we're basically just kind of, squishing bugs and doing maintenance on the existing platform. But, some people might remember in the second or third to last day of the last round, all of the funds that were in the estimated match for the climate round just like disappeared for a day. And as you might imagine, that was a pretty stressful day for me because I got a lot of messages from a lot of people wondering what had happened. Of course, that's just an estimate. It wasn't like money that was gone. It wasn't a crypto there was no hack. There was no but it just like basically the queue had gotten so intense going into the last few days that the back end of the platform just broke and the estimates disappeared. And we had to wait for the site to kind of catch up and recalculate and then have them appear again. So there was a whole bunch of devs working around the clock trying to sort of fix that right in the middle of an active round, very much like building the plane while we're flying it kind of thing. But yeah, what I'm excited about in terms of where this is going is that, we get to experiment with all these tools more and more. Like people are starting to beta test some of these new pieces that I was just referencing. And ultimately, we're going to have a forkable version of the Gitcoin grants round. So anybody will be able to run their own quadratic funding round with all the bells and whistles and all the different tooling, and potentially add other functionality, other interesting things, and then people could fork that. I mean, the whole sort of composability, interoperability of what we're doing in this open source world. I think we don't even really know what interesting things could bubble out of it. All kinds of totally brilliant people give us all kinds of suggestions and ideas all the time of things that they'd like to see on the Gitcoin platform, and very soon they'll basically have the ability to test those things. To try all kinds of different experiments, and we're taking sort of baby steps towards that right now with this decoupling of the rounds. We're starting to run each of the different side rounds as if it was its own Gitcoin grants round in and of itself, with different eligibility criteria, different teams. So yeah, watch this space. Stay tuned. There's definitely more interesting stuff to come. And I for one, I don't know if you've seen the data visualization that Kevin has done of the number of sort of nodes in the Gitcoin network as more and more people have donated. But I'm super curious to see what that's going to look like when we've got all these different versions of the platform running at different times. They may connect with each other, like you might get a donation here and that gets you a matching fund over there. People moving their passport identity from one to another. Like I think we're just kind of right at the beginning of what could be an explosion of sort of innovation and opportunity that comes out of what's possible with that sort of new version of the platform.
Super exciting. Looking forward to it. And if it's obvious to me after speaking with you, and should be obvious to people viewing this, that it's in good hands. And so I do appreciate your time. I know you have some place to be, and you're a busy guy, and you're an important guy, and you get a lot of responsibility. So thank you for the time. And and we'll talk to you, I'm sure, in the future. Rez, you want to stick around and look at some projects?
Yes, let's look at some projects.
Okay.
But thank you for being around, Ben. We really appreciate you coming, spilling all of this hot alpha, and also showing us cool projects. I mean, we'll link everything in the description. Go follow Ben West on Twitter for hot takes, and public goods are good.
And public goods are good. Damn, guys. Really great talking to you. I'm actually off to the climate team meeting for GR15 to talk about all the various different things that are happening live on the grants round right now. So lovely talking to you.
All right,
talk to you later.
Take care.
See you later.
All righty. So we've picked a couple projects that we want to highlight. Of course, this is not an exhaustive list. Of course, there are so many that we could talk about, but I think you've picked 3. I've picked 1. Yes. Let's get into them, Sir Rez. Impact DAO Media, a digital magazine highlighting builders and impact and culture. Why does this, anything you want to add to that? And why you tried to do it?
So I wanted to select some sort of a cross-section of things that we haven't talked about yet. And I think one of them is definitely media, like us. But why did we not do a Gitcoin round?
Are we the media, Rez?
We're the media.
Are we part of the media?
Yeah, sadly, yes. But yeah, so these folks over at Impact DAO Media, last Gitcoin round, they raised money to do essentially like a research about the Impact DAOs in general and write a book. This time around, they want to expand operations and start doing a magazine about Impact DAOs and talking about the people and missions and vibes around them. So I found that mission to be cool, and I think ReFi, the general crypto ecosystem of public goods, Impact DAOs, they deserve to be highlighted. We need more attention. We need more eyeballs, and I think media makes the eyeballs more capable of looking at things, because often everything looks very complicated, hard to get into, hard to wrap your head around, and this scares people off. So media good.
Quite the statement. Media good. There you have it. Good.
Media good.
Media good. I was, when you said that we're the media, I was reminded of a quote. I forgot who said it, but basically it was something along the lines of, eventually everybody becomes what they hate. Here we are.
Here we are.
Next thing you brought to the attention was Lobby 3, decentralized lobbying, bringing Web3 to Washington, D.C. By the way, a very well defined project. We had a conversation off air about the importance on these Gitcoin grant rounds to be explicit and clear in the title of your project with your intention, because there are 200 and it is difficult to click through everyone to understand. Like, just, you got to be clear, you got to grab attention. So very good job on that. Why did you want to highlight this project?
Lobbying is a very important direction, I feel, for crypto in general. There was also another one for Europe. I chose to highlight this one because the US is, I think, more confused when it comes to crypto regulation. The EU seems to be doing an okay-ish job. We have some regulation coming down the pipes. That doesn't seem like the worst thing ever. So putting money towards politicians understanding what crypto is, what it isn't, where are the boundaries, how should you be looking at it. I think that's a very worthwhile endeavor, and these are one of the very few people in the what is the official name? The lobbying the lobbying group.
Lobby sphere? I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Crypto advocacy. Yes,
Crypto
that's how we're
advocacy,
calling
fit
it.
that
But,
much
you
better.
know,
CA.
yes. Regulatory crypto advocacy, very necessary, because if we aren't in the room, ultimately dumb things will happen, like the Canadian regulation we talked about a few weeks ago. Every time I mention that, I get a smile on my face. It's mostly to do with like how stupid you can be with regulation. That's a highlight for the year, I think. And I'm hoping the more education there is out there, at least they won't decide to do, you can only invest in 4 different coins, and so one of them is Bitcoin Cash.
And one of them is a rug, to be determined.
to be
Yeah, no, I mean, these politicians have an outsized source of power by the definition of how we run our governmental systems. We have representative democracy. Representatives, by definition, have an outsized impact on the decisions that are made. That's why we elect them. So if we don't have people who know what they're talking about, and like, you got to give, to be fair, like, you got to give politicians a pass. Like, they can't know everything about everything, right? I mean, a good politician is one that's going to surround him or herself with a group of people that are knowledgeable about a bunch of different things, right? You can't expect a 75 or even a 35-year-old senator from Kentucky or whatever state to understand the complexities of consensus mechanisms and all of these things, right? It is incumbent upon us. We are the ones that should be educating them before, let's say, the TradFi powers that be get to them first, right? It's just to some degree, it's a game of influence, right? Who can influence and get their information to these politicians, and maybe that influences maybe it's a lot of different things, but good to see that there's a lobbying, a concerted lobbying effort. Do not underestimate it. Anything you want to add to that? Anything else you'd like to add about that?
Lobbying is underrated. More organizations should consider lobbying, and generally having a relationship with your government in any form is actually pretty nice. So definitely do suggest that.
Extolling the virtues of lobbying while defining us as the media, this absolutely is a soul-crushing episode.
We're going downhill from here.
It's over.
This is the end. It's over.
Let's juxtapose. Let's create a ballast of hope here with the Dream DAO by Civics Unplugged. Now, this is the second time you've brought this project to our viewers' attention. You did it in GR15. Rez, this is good. I am going to say it right now. This is your favorite project. I know you're not going to say that, but this is the only one we've brought to the attention twice. Why is this your favorite project, Rez?
It's just a good idea. We need more people doing Web3 stuff, and the general concept is that when we're talking about ReFi, a lot of the work that we're doing is so life would be viable in 20 years. That would be nice. 2050, people should still be alive. The planet should not be on fire. Our ecosystems maybe not collapsed. That would be very good. And fundamentally, Gen Z has a very tough road ahead of them because they're even younger than us. And that means that they have even more time to live on the hellscape that is slowly emerging. So
I thought we were
we
going to
need
bring
to get
hope
them.
to this.
Yeah.
What's going on
No,
with you?
no. It's and these are going to be the people that are going to also have the longest time to work on stuff and change things. So what DreamDAO is trying to do is that they're trying to bring more Gen Z into the Web3 social impact side and give them mentorship, let them work on projects, get them internships. And all of these things are amazing. I mean, like, we need to be working on how do we grow the community of people that actually care and are working on stuff. Because the default will be you will go work at a corporation that may or may not be doing things that are in your best interest.
There you go. Human capital. We are mining human capital, cultivating human capital. It is.
Yeah, it's just I love your spins. Like this is the end of day spins for me.
That's it, man. That's. No, that's a good one. Very good to bring that up. All right, here's one that I would like to bring to our attention is the Tater DAO. You know what? I like a lot of things about Tater DAO. The first thing I like is their branding. I love that little potato. I like the look on his face. It's like mischievous. It's hard to put into words. It's defiant, maybe. I'm not virulent, perhaps. I'm not exactly sure. I like it. And then what they actually do. And so here's the tough thing is like, we can't be experts on every project, but my understanding of this, and this is an open invitation to any project that we represent to come on, reach out to us, and we'll chat with you. But TaterDAO, it seems, is making it easier for projects to move the ownership or to verify the ownership of real world assets, real estate, and to put them on chain, which is something that I think we're absolutely, not just in the refi space, just in the entire crypto space, are going to have to do. We're going to have to figure out a way to digitize reality and put it on the blockchain. I forgot, there was an academic who basically wrote a paper on this. Weinstein, one of the Weinstein brothers, basically wrote an article saying, you know, essentially what blockchain is doing is digitizing reality, right? It's giving physical properties to digital assets. Real estate is like a fundamental thing that we should be doing that with, in my humble opinion, if we're going to unlock the value in this space, not just in regenerative finance, but in everything, right? So it seems like, or their description says that they will be doing that. They can put characteristics of assets into like NFTs. So you could, you know, if you wanted to do a solar lease, and you wanted to digitize that, you wanted to put on a blockchain. You know, the accuracy, what you're actually holding in your treasury, what does your NFT represent? Does it actually represent these solar panels? Does it represent the earth? What does it represent? So like they're working on that, which I fully support. I think we're going to need that. Anything you want to add to that?
Also,
Yeah.
yes. So one of the things they bring out is that they want to nest LLCs within an NFT. So you have a company that is owned by an NFT, and then you have that LLC owned a piece of land. So now you essentially have ownership of that land traveling around as an NFT. That sounds incredibly cool. I can't wait to see what weird Web3 Ponzi's we're gonna get out of that.
We're going to do that. You and I are going to do that. We're going to nest LLCs into NFTs.
And then have a treasury full of land. That's the plan. Just have a treasury full of land.
I love it. We're going to do that.
It'll be great.
We're going to do that.
It'll be the biggest bubble you've ever seen. It's Land DAO.
Bubble DAO.
Bubble DAO.
Yeah.
Bubble Land DAO.
All right. I think it was Eric Weinstein. That my memory serves. There's two of them. One, yeah, he's the one who did it. He's the mathematician. Okay. Last thing we'll kind of bring to your attention, or second to last thing we'll bring to your attention. CO2 Cult is doing a, what do you call it?
Grant-a-thon.
Grant-a-thon.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
What's the date? You're going to be on that.
Yes, it is on the 19th, and it's going to be on Twitter. So there's a, I think, 12-hour or 24-hour event where every hour there is a new host, a new co-host, and there are projects that are pitching themselves on their Gitcoin grants, presenting what they are doing and asking for people to go and give them $1. And as we discussed at the start of this episode, it's quite important to have a community engagement in Gitcoin, and I love that CO2 Cult has figured out this interesting way of bringing people together and getting eyeballs on projects.
Yeah, it's fun. I was part of the last one, just talking to people. You know what I love about it is, to some degree, not that it, like, people are pitching, but like you kind of are. You're kind of soft pitching your project to try to get I love it. It's like this rapid pace, low stakes, cooperative Shark Tank. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Where like nobody's gonna tell you your project's bad, right? Everyone's super supportive, so it's just like it's the fun part of pitching without the stressful part of, like, I don't know, getting harsh feedback from billionaires.
And because of that, I'm out.
And because of that, yes, you got to say that. All right, yeah. And last thing is ReFi Summer has a collective. This is from the founders at ReFi Dao, who, you know, they are prolific, to say the least. They've got a lot of things happening. I've been involved in some of these. Their circles are really good. Bati's MRV 101, which you mentioned before. I mean, it's a lot, and they're a force to be reckoned with in this space. They're really out there to make change and create community. So check out that collective. Everything will be linked in the description of this video. There will be 1 billion links. We've done it. We have gone through Gitcoin Grant round 15. We have talked to Ben West. We have discussed caffeine. We have discussed all sorts of tangential things. I haven't asked you in a few weeks, what are you bench pressing these days?
There will be a tweet in the next 3 days containing just a number. This number will mean something, and if you've been watching the past episodes, you will know what that number means.
Bullish. I have never been more bullish in my life, waiting for this. All right, man. Any last words?
Public goods are good. Gitcoin is the best thing after sliced bread. Just get some experiments out there. If you have a crazy idea and you still haven't done it, go set up a Gitcoin grant. Maybe you'll get some money. Maybe that money will help you work on your crazy side project.
And I will add to that lobbying is good, and we need more money in politics. We'll catch you all on the next one. Remember to ape responsibly. Peace, dudes and dudettes.